Hello there once again, Mick Cornett and Kent Myers on The Verdict. Welcome to the show. We're glad you're with us. We're here every week. We meet interesting people and we deal with topical issues. We've got in a guy that's been long overdue to be a guest on this show.
Indeed. Currie Ballard is going to be our guest today. Currie is a current member of the Oklahoma Pardon and Parole Board, but that's not why he's on. He has a life story that we have entitled this show, a story that enriches us all, and we think that's what you'll hear today.
Currie is an inspirational fellow. He's here today on The Verdict. We'll be right back.
America has been here before, faced with daunting challenges, and we've always found the courage to lead. Foreign oil, greenhouse gases, we have the power to do something about them with American natural gas. Chesapeake is forging ahead, converting our fleets to clean-burning natural gas vehicles, encouraging others to do the same. Welcome to America. Chesapeake, America's champion of natural gas.
Wilsey, Meyer, Eatman, Tate. We're accountants. We do taxes, business valuations, estate planning, and consulting. And we're right here in Oklahoma, working with the owners of small and medium-sized businesses. Steve Wilsey and Stuart Meyer have the resources and the experience. Wilsey, Meyer, Eatman, Tate in Oklahoma City and Tulsa.
Welcome back to the set of The Verdict. Mick Cornett and Kent Myers, and Kent's going to introduce today's guest.
Today we are genuinely thrilled to have as our guest Currie Ballard. Currie is a member of the Oklahoma Pardon and Parole Board, but that's really not why he's here, although we'll talk about some of those experiences as we go along today. Currie grew up as a young person in Los Angeles, where he experienced many things in his home environment that he'll tell you about. Yeah, he was educated at Langston University, where he developed a deep love for the collection and understanding of black history. He has twice been appointed to the Pardon and Parole Board, which is a little unusual, by two different governors, one Democrat and one Republican. Frank Keating appointed him first, and then Brad Henry appointed you most recently.
Well, that's Mary Fallon.
Mary Fallon.
Yes.
He's been appointed by two Republican governors.
That's correct.
I stand corrected. Sorry about that. But thanks for straightening that out. We want to make sure Mary Fallon comes back on the show when we ask her. And very significantly, in 2010, he was inducted into the Oklahoma Historian Hall of Fame. And there's kind of an interesting sidelight. He loves to collect butterflies. So Currie, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Kent. Mr. Mayor, it's always good to see you. You know, the story of Currie Ballard emanates right here in this great state. My people were Choctaw freedmen. That were the slaves of the Choctaw Indians. And as a result, they wrote a song. My ancestors wrote a song that most people of Oklahoma are familiar with. And it's called Swing Low, Sweet Chariot. This year, that song became the state gospel song of Oklahoma. And I was privileged to work as the Assistant State Secretary in the Oklahoma State Senate. And as a result, of witnessing that in the well of the Senate, it was quite an emotional situation. But I was born and raised in the Watts section of Los Angeles during the turbulent 60s. And my people moved in 1950 from Muskogee to Los Angeles. My grandmother happened to be the cook for Blake Edwards, the big Hollywood director and producer, did extremely well. My grandfather.
Pink Panther movies.
From Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Yeah.
So it was a beautiful experience, but unfortunately, on that move from Muskogee to Los Angeles, my mother and my uncle wound up getting into trouble. And to the point where they wound up serving time in prison. Now keep in mind, my grandfather was a World War II veteran from Gibson Station, Oklahoma, had never had a traffic citation. He worked as a machinist there in Los Angeles, did extremely well for himself. My grandparents were the most honest people I'd ever met in my life. Most honest people I'd never met in my life. They, you know, the old adage, if somebody had, a cashier had paid too much money, my grandfather would go back down there and say, no, I've summed this up and, you know, I owe you $1.50. That's the type of household I was raised in.
Now, how old were you when you moved to California?
That's where I was born.
Oh, you're born there.
I was born there. All of my brothers and siblings were born in Los Angeles. Again, my mother and my uncle were from Muskogee, Oklahoma, and they moved with my grandfolks. Again, the gravity of big city Los Angeles in the 1950s, late 50s, was just too much for my uncle and mother. Subsequently, my mother met my biological father, who I only met twice in my life. Never received a postcard from my father. My brother and I never got a phone call on nothing. Total abandonment. And he was from Chickasha, Oklahoma. He was from Chickasha, finished Lincoln High School with Dr. Ada Lois Scipio Fisher, Dr. Fisher, who integrated University of Oklahoma's law school. So, but again, I was oblivious to that because I had no relationship with my biological father. So when my mother went to prison the first time, my grandfolks stepped up and raised the 4 boys.
I see.
Raised us, did all they could for us, showed us the right way. My mother was released from the state penitentiary in the state of California. My father was in and out of prison all of his life, all of his life. He never got it. The light bulb never came on. So anyway, when my mother was released, she did a parole revocation. She was revoked as a result of associating with former ex-felons. And that's part of your parole certificate that you can't do that in the state of Oklahoma. So anyway, as a result of that, she was incarcerated the second time. And I don't know if any of y'all are old enough to remember a TV show called Kung Fu with David Carradine.
I am.
Well, anyway, the first time I was on the parole board and we went to Lexington, and I saw that thick plate glass and the telephones on both ends, I had a Kung Fu flashback of my grandmother would come to the state penitentiary. I'd sit on my grandmother's knee, and I'd talk with my mother, and she'd be on the other side of the phone. And keep in mind, I'm 4 years old, and I could not figure out, one, we only had so many minutes, and that phone would go dead. And I asked my grandmother, I says, well, you know, why we can't hear her now? Secondly, I just could not fathom as a kid why she couldn't leave with us.
Yeah.
I couldn't put that together. So that was such a traumatic experience, that separation from your mother, no relationship with your biological father, but through the grace of God, through the grace of Jesus Christ, I stand before you today.
Well, tell us about the 1960s. What happened then?
Well, grew up in the Watts section, so I was a kid. I was 7 years old during the August of 1965 Watts riot. And
Do you see it?
oh my goodness. My grandfolks, like I said, they did fairly well. They owned 2 homes and an apartment building. You know, they're very frugal Oklahomans. And so anyway, behind us was a whole row of apartments. And I vividly remember getting on top of the fence and seeing people, they would have their trunks open, and what they were doing, they'd take gasoline and various pieces of cloth and bottles, and they were filling those bottles full of gasoline, stuffing materials in the tops of them, and that was the first time I'd ever heard the term Molotov cocktail. And anyway, as the evening progressed and you'd see the helicopters in the sky, we're talking about, you know, Army helicopters, we're talking about tanks down the street. My three other brothers and I went to my grandfather and said, "Oh, can we loot? Can we loot like the rest of these people?" And my grandfather looked at us and said, "Civilized people don't do those kind of things." He says, "We're law-abiding people." Again, most honest man I'd ever met.
Pretty good lesson, I
Yeah.
Yeah.
So therefore, we didn't participate in none of that lawlessness.
And was that in a few weeks
Well,
of restlessness?
Well, I think it was 3 days. It was 3 days, and several people were killed. Unfortunately, some firefighters were killed trying to put out, you know, these burning buildings and what have you. People from sheriff's department were injured. It was a mess.
Yeah.
Worldwide publicity.
Yeah, it was a mess. Los Angeles was never the same.
How'd that shape you?
It shaped me that you use civil disobedience, what Dr. King was talking about, opposed to violence.
Right.
It shaped me from the standpoint you get involved politically to render changes in America.
So you saw that change was necessary, but you saw two distinct paths.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
And again, I was always taught by my grandfolks, you don't violate the law. See the shame of both of my parents being in prison, and I'm not saying this to brag, I never ditched a day of school in my life, and I never cheated on an exam. Now, I'm not telling you I'm one of the disciples. I'm not telling you that. But what I'm telling you is a level of integrity that when you got some good people that care about you and are concerned about you, they plant those seeds so you don't wind up making some bad decisions like your folks did.
We're going to take a break here and get back. We're visiting with Currie Ballard. Quite a life story. We'll have more on the verdict when we return.
This man is having a heart attack, and he doesn't even know he's at risk. Heart attacks aren't always as dramatic as you see on TV. Gone unchecked, heart disease could crumple everything. A simple heart scan could save your life. Get a $50 heart scan at St. Anthony, the most trusted experts in cardiovascular care.
The thing that has made the most sense for me is realizing that I am still an educator, and that is what I do at the Chickasaw Nation. I'm Dr. Amanda Cobb-Greetham. I'm a historian, and I'm Chickasaw. The Chickasaw Cultural Center is amazing. It is a very, very special place devoted to the sharing and to the celebration of Chickasaw history and culture. State-of-the-art technology, exhibits that are not like anything I've ever seen. The Spirit Forest is incredible, and you feel as if you have actually just walked into a forest with huge trees all around you. It's timeless, and yet it's sort of also representative of our time depth, to really just sort of reach through time and touch the past. By the end of the exhibits, you really have a sense of Chickasaw cultural and political resurgence, and the extent to which we are a healthy, dynamic, and vital tribe today. Chickasaws have always been an inclusive people. This is something for the whole community and for the state of Oklahoma.
Every time our country imports energy, we're saying we've lost confidence in our own.
But Oklahomans know, under the land of the free lies the energy to be brave.
Advanced technology has led to vast discoveries of oil and natural gas that have doubled America's supply estimates.
Using one well to do the work of 10 in half the time, we're proving that America's best answers will always come from inside our borders.
Oklahoma's oil and natural gas industry, advancing our state, empowering our nation.
Welcome back to the set of The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers and our guest Currie Ballard. In the last segment, you were taking us through some of the early parts of your life. You eventually left Los Angeles for Oklahoma. Why did you make that move and what happened next?
Well, you know, again, my mother being from Muskogee, and she always loved this great state. So she would always plant a seed with my stepfather. Boy, if there's any kind of way. So anyway, my stepfather was a journeyman electrician, and he did well for himself. So received, through the union, he received information about the building of the General Motors assembly plant here in Oklahoma City, to build a facility. So he went to my mother, and we kind of had a family meeting, and thus we were on the road to Oklahoma City in October of 1976. And from there, I wound up working for J.C. Penney's at Shepherd's Mall. It's everything except what it used to be in 1976. And as a stock boy, started off as a stock boy. Some of the nicest people I'd ever met in my life were in retail. The ladies with the pies and cakes they'd bake for you, and the salespeople on the floor. It was kind of a family. And they knew I was going to school at Rose State. It was called Oscar Rose Junior College at that time. And I was working full-time and going to school full-time, and had a lot of pleasure for about 18 months. And I came home to my folks and I said, I've always heard about Langston University, and I want to go. Now, Langston was in bad shape in 1978. It was in bad shape. Underfunded, enrollment was down. It was only 700 students when I enrolled at Langston in 1978. And my folks were not supportive of it. I'm the truest delight of the world. They said, well, it's always in the news and this and that, and Langston ain't the same Langston it was 30 years ago, and so they weren't encouraging. Matter of fact, they were so lack of encouraging, they didn't give me not one penny, one penny. So I wound up, again, had saved my money, enrolled at Langston. Boy, what a wonderful decision. Various people I met in 1978. I joined the fraternity, played in the band at Langston, and had the time of my life. Still have relations with these people to date, 30 some odd years later. So it was the best decision because of my finance running out of money, and my folks would not kick into the till. I wound up with a job offer at General Motors. So I had to put my education on hold, and I wound up working for the United Auto Workers on the line, and then I went into management, and that's why I spent 14 and a half years in management at the Oklahoma City plant. And you talking about something that broke my heart the day the facility shut down, even though I was at Langston University. Dr. Holloway I took the buyout at General Motors, and Dr. Holloway says, you've been doing this Black history stuff for OETA and Perry Broadcasting, radio and what have you. I can put you on the payroll. And boy, what a difference did that make. That culminated in me winning an Emmy for OETA for writing, producing, and hosting the Ebony Chronicles. I did work for CBS National News, 3 stints with CBS National News, on the front cover of USA Today, Wall Street Journal twice. Kind of got a lot of exposure for doing this Black history, something that I loved. And was there at Langston until Dr. Haysbert became president and saw a different direction, a different change.
1990s, you're placed on the Pardon and Parole Board by Governor Keating.
Yes.
What was the background there? Did you approach them? Did they approach you? How did that happen?
Very interesting. Kay Dudley was the director of appointments. I had helped Governor Keating in Ward 7. I had him on my radio TV program, had him on the radio broadcast, Perry Broadcasting Company. And I get a call from the governor's office and says, Currie, I don't know if you are aware of this, but Governor Keating got more votes out of Ward 7 than any other Republican governor in the history of this state. And we'd like to contribute some of that to some of your work. I said, well, I'm flattered. And he says, well, is it any position you'd be interested in? And I said, the Pardon and Parole Board. And
why was that?
Well,
Because of your history?
My history. Yeah. Both parents, all of my brothers wound up incarcerated. And through the grace of God, I was able to circumvent that.
What do you bring to that position, though? What differs you from the other members of the board because of your life experiences? How do you view these really tough cases?
Well, first of all, being the only member in the country whose both parents were incarcerated, I can relate to separation. But see, two sets of people do time when someone's incarcerated. The family does time and the inmate does time. So I could personally relate to that. I think that's a level of empathy. I think that's a level of being able to flip the script, so to speak, as the young folk would say, that no one else brings. Now, I'm not saying my colleagues and all the predecessors are not compassionate people, but they haven't lived it.
Right.
It's one thing. It's one thing to read about Tom Sawyer. It's another thing to be a character of it. So that's what I bring. I bring a conservative viewpoint on top of that. I'm a Republican. I'm a conservative Republican. And this is the reddest state in America. Like it or not, that's just the way it is. So being able to traverse a point of view of compassion with conservatism, I think is very unique, and I think I enhance the process.
Got about a minute and a half left. Anything pertinent right now on the Pardon and Parole Board that you're dealing with?
Well, the governor's dealing with the Larry Yarbrough's case, life without parole for a drug offense. You have 47 people in Department of Corrections, life without parole for a drug offense. Mr. Yarbrough has served 16 years with not one infraction. And when I asked Mr. Yarbrough, how in the world could you be in prison 16 years with no hope? And his response was, I know at some point the good Lord will intervene. Now you're talking about faith that moves mountains.
What's next for Currie Ballard?
Well, every day's a blessing, and that's kind of the way I've been taking things. From where I've come from in life and where God's brought me, I let him have the playbook.
That's good.
That's fabulous. And I understand you collect butterflies? We got about 15 seconds.
Yeah,
Is that for real?
Well, I'm a gardener, and I finally, the last 4 or 5 years, focused my gardening on attracting butterflies, bees, and hummingbirds. So
how's that working?
Oh, every day Sunday.
Currie Ballard. Currie, thanks very much for coming on The Verdict.
Thank you.
Thanks, Currie.
A most interesting show. Kent and I'll have a final word when we return.
One.
When you have something important to communicate, it becomes clear that there's a lot of competition for your audience's attention. So how can your message stand out and actually resonate with your audience? Legal Graphics has the answers. The team at Legal Graphics will work with you to plan, design, and even test your presentation to ensure your message will be heard and remembered. Call Legal Graphics today to schedule an appointment. The readiness is all.
The good life comes naturally to Tulsa, where nature's beauty is matched with an eye for aesthetics. A legacy of neighborhoods graced with lawns and landscaping and handsome homes. A place that seems to have patented an ideal lifestyle. Bank First is loyal to the quality of life Tulsa assures its citizens, to the priority placed on education, culture, and growth. Loyal to builders who transform raw land into residential charm. Developers who see opportunity and add vitality to Tulsa's economy. Bank First serves both enterprise and private lives that need a loyal partner. It's how we help nurture this city's very good life. Bank First. Loyal to Oklahoma. Loyal to you.
The Journal-Record is pleased to be a sponsor of The Verdict. The Journal-Record, since 1903, the best source of Oklahoma business news and legal information.
And for almost 30 years, Oklahoma political, government, and business leaders have turned to the McCarville Report for accurate, reliable, inside information. Visit the McCarville Report online.
Welcome back to the set of The Verdict. I hope you were able to see this show. Currie Ballard on to talk about his life, and boy, what a vast variety of life experiences he brings.
Yeah, quite a story, and he's just done so well. We're lucky to have drawn him back to Oklahoma, and he's still to this day rendering a valuable public service.
Well, and you appreciate his passion for the issues. You know, people that are selected for the Pardon and Parole Board have a really tough job. It's underappreciated, and you can see in Currie's his eyes and his emotions that he takes this seriously. And having been a child with parents incarcerated, he sees more than one side of the story, which very few do that are selected for that position.
Well, yeah, he's the only one in the country that's serving on a Pardon and Parole Board that had both parents incarcerated.
Well, absolutely fabulous. Hope you enjoyed the show with Currie Ballard. I have a website I want to give you, so you can go to our website and tell us about an interesting guest that you'd like to see as a subject matter on The Verdict. That website is theverdict.tv. That's theverdict.tv. You can go to the website and send us an email and tell us about a guest you'd like to see on an upcoming show. Next week, we're going to have Mike Lester, the mayor of the city of Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. He and I will be able to talk about some municipal issues, and you'll see the differences between medium-sized cities and big cities and the issues that we all face.
Yeah, I'll referee.
Okay. For Ken, I'm Mick Cornett. We'll see you next week.
The preceding program was produced exclusively for the Cox Channel.